Pensioners manifesto. I think, as I say about there's enough people to talk about. I just want to thank you for coming. I want to thank the council for always providing us with a venue, and I want to thank Steve from Sportbox for live streaming this, because Thursday isn't a good night for people to come to meetings. Although I appreciate all of you coming along, but it's really good to have a record like this that can go out. And there has been an awful lot of interest in the live stream itself. So thanks very much. You've always been supportive of us, right? And I want to thank the platform, all of you, for coming along to speak and be obviously in support of our organisation. So I'll just go through the names of the people who are speaking. I'm sure you know some of them. I'm sure you know all. Mary Harrison is going to be introducing the manifesto. Tayo Aluko will be speaking and singing, which would be terrible if we didn't, because we all want to hear his voice and the militancy that he thinks about. Lee Hunter will be speaking as well, our friend from the FBU, which we've had a lot of experience of support from the FBU many years. Mary Whitby will be speaking to us on two subjects, so a lot to deal with. Sorry to say, thank you, Mary. And of course, without much introduction, of course, we have Andrew Feinstein, famously against Keir Starmer, and really massively reduced his majority. So welcome to everybody, and thank you to everybody for coming along to speak about our manifesto. I want to also thank Margie, who uses, uses all our meetings, but uses these opportunities to raise funds for the and yeah. I'm totally the thing is, we do need funds. So if you can buy that donation for a book there you want to do it, or sending checks to the we really appreciate it. We do need your support in real terms as well as they do cost quite a lot. It's not even the events, it's that we actually don't just hold these nice meetings where we agitate, educate and organise, but we also have to produce leaflets, which for all the different campaigns. We're not a one-topic organisation. We actually, as you all know, we campaign on every 3/4 of health service, bars and stuff. So I'm just going to give one apology here, and I've been told what to say. Believe me, and it's from Philip House, who have heard the word Bordeaux once. I heard the report. They are the people, but in Bordeaux. They are the people who are responsible for the graphics and the photography. They couldn't make it tonight as they are in. And they are screening one of their films called the film is called Avoiding the at all costs. It's just how where we all are. So I'll move on to the body of the meeting now. And just to say, the star of the show tonight isn't Andrew Feinstein. Sorry, Andrew. The star of the show is the manifesto. And the person who deal with the manifesto is Mary Harrison. Mary Harrison, one of our coaches, but you have to credit Mary with actually being the for building up our organisation to what it is today. Mary was the secretary for 5 years. Oh, can you all switch your phones off, please? And she's rather, you know, the political leader, I think, of our organisation in many years, because I'm the political leadership, was Tony Mulcahy's. And if anyone has stepped into Tony Mulcahy's shoes with their own strength of political leadership, it's Mary Harris. Mary organised the manifesto and such a wide group. So please welcome Mary Harris.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Audrey. You read it just as I've written it. Encourage you to take our second edition of the manifesto. I think the important thing about a meeting like this is that we are, and many of us are the generation, some people in the 50s, people in the 60s, we were certainly active periods of time. And we are one of the generation that got attacked and vilified. And it was suggested that we were the most fortunate generation in whose benefits of the middle class. And from that point of view, I think that's absolutely right. We were, because we only remember relatively clearly voting, human rights, and council housing, proper funded national health service, actually universal. Council housing for everyone, and you know, a much better society. Look, that was the only reality that we actually knew. In the 50s, and if you walked into the 60s, of course, we were still campaigning. We although people say you have all the benefits, all the generation was forced to keep the balance. And I think it's important that comrades actually remember when you get attacked, or you know, having all the advantages of a free university education, of a properly funded national health service, of you know, the opportunity to move into a house, to council housing, of course, was massive throughout the country in the years that I was growing up. And in fact, many of our generation actually aspired to get a council house because they were amongst the best housing in the country. And it wasn't easy to actually get a council house, but it was a very, very important aspect of our growing up. And I think we should remember that we were the ones that, when we get attacked, and say, well, we were out there, we were campaigning, we've been campaigning all our lives against war, in favour of the National Health Service. We supported the strike, we supported the miners, we supported all those workers who were fighting to defend their rights and the conditions that they had fought for over years. And it's sad for us now, looking back and seeing the situation our grandchildren, where they are having to fight the same battles over and over again, or fight for decent working conditions and try and fight for the opportunity to actually get a home of their own. But I think one of the important things about this second edition of the manifesto, and I'm absolutely delighted with it because it was a real joint effort, and lots of comrades have made contributions to this. And you will see that we've got several new sections in it. And I'd like to thank in particular the contribution from RAP in relation to animal rights, because that's something that we. And I'd also like to mention that comrades who have been involved in campaigning all of their lives and now in their 70s are still campaigning. Comrades who fought in relation to the Saviour of Women's Hospital, and Leslie Mahmood in particular, comrades have made a tremendous contribution to that particular campaign. And I can remember when the Women's Hospital first opened, Leslie was out there along with several of us campaigning in addition to that hospital. And our slogan at that time was "Bring it to one room go," because in order to open the Women's Hospital in Grove Street, they closed Mill Road, Oxford Street, and the Women's Hospital. So the comrades who were campaigning then in the 1970s and 80s are still campaigning, and that's a very we should be immensely proud of. I also like we have a youth section of younger pensioners who have joined us quite recently. In particular, I'd like to mention Alma and Terry, who have been so much in the forefront in relation to the campaign over Palestine. Everything that the states can actually throw at them. I'd also like to mention the contribution from Mary in relation to corporatisation, because something that wasn't included in our original manifesto, but it's a reflection of how our members can recognise the way society is moving and how capitalism now is in a crisis. And the whole idea of corporatisation is capitalism to actually get total control of major cities all over the world. And that section of corporatisation is something that is tremendous because nobody else has done that. And they party have corporatisation. We're actually leading in relation to that. And I particularly like to say thank you to those comrades who campaign for the National Health Service, because this is something that was very critical. We've had comrades who have been campaigning for the National Health Service for many, many years, but continue to argue that mission groups now and putting forward the case for a restoration of the National Health Service and to the kind of conditions that we think people in the country are connected to. We need to have proper health care. We can't have any more of this, bringing around using different systems, methods of this mainstream now, and the total privatisation of the National Health Service. So I won't say much more because I think Audrey is indicating that I'm talking about but what I would like to say is I'm so proud we are in actual fact the opposition in the city and life. We are also the leaders when it comes to taking up issues and using leaflets, going on the picket line, talking to workers, talking to people on the demonstrations and so on and so forth. And it's what we do best, and it's what we must carry on doing. Good luck, comrades. We'll carry on by
just when anybody speaks, can you please speak directly into the microphone because it's going to pick up one of the big things down there on the line. Thanks, Steve. We will do that. Now, The next speaker is an MPA member. He's a playwright. He's a author. He's an actor. Absolutely wonderful thing. And he's a militant activist. Our comrade, Tayo Aluko.
Sharing with Audrey and with Andrew. I was due to do that in Dubai before Keir Starmer got scared of the combination. He decided to call it an election instead. Welcome, Andrew, to the. I don't know whether you're. Do not need a visa to come here. Nelson Mandela because of his activism on behalf of Palestine. I have a few trips to make myself to London Monday for that concert that I'm promoting, which involves the man who is on death row in Ohio, and his pianist friend in London playing jazz with some London musicians, and my friend Keir Starmer, who is of poets and activists from within this prison cell. Going to be reading his poetry to my written book from to Toulouse-Lautrec in London. So I'm looking out for that. And a few weeks later, I went back down to London for a less exciting event, which is a visit to the US Embassy. Because I applied for a visa to go and work there. It was initially unable to get approval for unknown, unspecified bureaucratic reasons. The approval, but what the next thing was to have an interview at the embassy, and that involves filling a long online form. Okay. One of the questions that I had to answer was, have you ever been arrested or convicted of any crimes? And I say yes. I was arrested for taking part in action for Palestine Action. I drove a van to the gates of an arms factory and, along with friends, prevented in. Email, I have no idea. Having to explain that was something that I did, which has been deemed offense, and I will have to sort of restrain myself from saying that. Well, I am a convicted felon, as you would say, but if you can elect a president I'm still taking advice as to how to pray, and I'll let you know if I succeed. Of course, I mean, what I did then was not violent. It was what I thought was doing something to prevent violence and destruction and causing death in Palestine. And people who do take part in Palestine actions, you know, they use violence. And I'm not saying that, or I condone it, because I'm on maybe want to secret Israeli sympathizers. But other people in Palestine actually have done the terrible thing of taking sledgehammer and smashing windows. But in defense of my people and all oppressed people around the world. And in fact, I got an email, a text today from a friend of mine, an African American in Nashville, Tennessee. I haven't heard from him for a while. It says, "Hey, my brother, Lord have mercy on us in this terrible country. The worst nightmare has come to reality because of some of our very brainwashed, cowardly, ignorant people. We have just been sent back to the 1950s. I'm afraid for us and this entire world and the NATO alliance. I'm afraid, Tayo, well, I don't know if I agree with him about the NATO alliance. I'm afraid, Tayo, please pray for me and my family. I love you, brother." And I replied, "Hey, my brother, it's easy for me to say this from the other side of the pond, but it's okay to be afraid. Don't forget, however, that we have powerful weapons at our disposal, namely our art." Daryl is also an actor. So namely our art. So we won't let the fear paralyze us. We'll make us take up arms and fight back. Love you, bro. So that being said, you know, I always say that the most powerful weapon is our art. And as Paul Robeson said, we can use it for protection of ourselves, our sanity, and reaching hearts and minds. Yeah. Reaching hearts and minds and souls down the centuries, despite the worst things that humans can do to one another. And this spiritual is the perfect example of that. And it says absolutely what we all want, which is peace. So this is a deep river, which brings in the River Jordan.
Where's the music coming from?
Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. don't you want to go to the gospel feast that promised land, where all is peace. Oh, deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. Oh, so okay. So our next speaker, you know, the FBU has always been, Mary would agree with this, always been an absolute close friend of the MPA. When it was Mark Rowe was our opposition help, he'd often come to speak to us, he'd drive the fire engine up, or we could, hold big demonstrations. So it was absolutely wonderful. So it's been great. We've really formed an absolutely solid relationship with Lee Hunter here. And so he's a long-time friend and supporter of the MPA, but financially they've supported us, but every time we wanted, their support, they've been there. Lee is a Merseyside Fire Brigade Secretary and acting Northwest Regional Chair. So please give a warm welcome to our
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you for the invitation to come and speak here tonight. It's always an absolute pleasure to come and speak to Merseyside Pensioners Association, and the Fire Brigade Union are very, very proud to have that relationship that we have with you. Just touching on something that Tayo said there, and that's quite an act to follow. Edward Snowden said, "What is legal is not always what is right. What you've done, comrade, is right." It's taken me a little while to get my head around it. And the phrase is Scout exceptionalism. Couldn't work out at first whether it was a compliment. I'm still not 100%. But the way I'm looking at it, I'm taking it as a compliment. And I think it's what we do in this city is when one of our own excels, we blow it up, and rightly so, because the rest of the city is the rest of the country is normally giving us a bit of a kicking. And I think Scout's exceptionalism really needs to be shown to Merseyside Pensioners Association. Because what they do for the size of the organisation that it is absolutely outstanding. They are at every single rally, every single picket line. It is not a party without the MPA. What they are doing in this city around Palestine, what they are doing in this city around the NHS, what they are doing in this city and wider on leading pensioners' rights is absolutely outstanding. When councillors from this city cannot attend pro-Palestine march, yet councillors from this city go and stand at pro-Israel rallies. It's an absolute outrage. But the MPA don't just fight for pensioners, they fight for everyone. they fight for my children who are 10 and 6. What they've got coming sometimes fills me with dread, because I can see, once they're out of education, there's no jobs, there's no housing, and what is this government and successive governments going to do? And when we talk about Scouse exceptionalism, we need to talk about Jack Jones, because Jack Jones was the starter of the pensioners movement, and he came from this city, and he started what the MPA have gone on to make outstanding leaps and bounds with, and that's exactly what this manifesto does. He was a trailblazer. In 1977, he was called the most important person in Britain, more important than the Prime Minister. And this good union man really speaks to me. My own trade union, Fire Brigade Union, has kept its affiliation with the Labour Party. Now, those who've spent any time in my company will know exactly my feelings on that, and those who've read any part of our national conference minutes will see that I've 3 times now tried to force this affiliation through from that Fire Brigade Union. Unfortunately, I haven't got there yet, but I'll keep trying. But what we need from the trade unions now, especially those that are still affiliated, is for them to step up. We need a new Jack Jones. And if we can't have a new Jack Jones, then we need the trade unions and the leaders to stand together and hold this government to task. Now, they've done it once, and it wasn't the greatest show of power. But what they did do, when Labour, and I use the term loosely, tried to water down the New Deal for working people, merely days into their time in government, the trade union leaders, including Matt Rapp, got together and went to Downing Street and said, we will not stand for this. And it's a small win, but we do have to count our wins, comrades, because they're not always there. So what we have to do is double down on our leaders, and if you are in a trade union, then get onto your leaders as well, get onto the leaders of your trade unions and tell them what you want. Because trade union is not a top-down. It should not work from the top down. We tell them what to do. They don't tell us what to do. I feel like this Labour government will water down that working deal, the New Deal for working people once again. Firefighter Manifesto was launched around about the same time as the original MPA Manifesto, Pensioners Manifesto, in November 2023. And some of the parts of it do mirror. We talk about housing in there and the need for proper social housing, the need for good housing for all, not housing owned by royals who will allow black mould to grow on there and carry on taking the money. Housing that is suitable for people and families to live in, that will not make them sick. Housing that is not wrapped in petrol that will go on fire and kill 72 people like it did in Thatcher. We also talk about the climate, as the MPA manifesto does. What we're seeing around the world, what we've seen in Spain in the last couple of weeks, and what we are starting to see more and more in the UK, climate incidents that are killing people. We're seeing fires in 2022 that wiped out vast swathes of grassland in London, but also affected people's homes. London Fire Brigade, the biggest fire brigade in the country, couldn't cope. They had to bring in fire engines from surrounding counties. What we are demanding from this government, and we do demand it, we don't ask, we demand further investments into the fire and rescue service. 20% of firefighters have been cut, the numbers have been cut in the last 15 years. We are 20% down. In this city, when I joined fire service in 2003, we had 1,400 firefighters. Today we have 642. But most fire stations went from 2 fire engines to 1 in around about 2015, and that remains the case. We are building them up slowly, but we went down from around about 47 and we're now down to 32. Fire hasn't changed. The risks that people change and the risks that people face and the risks that firefighters face haven't changed. We need that investment. We're also seeing an ageing population. We turn out to more and more health-related incidents, and we do see that does affect the ageing population more. The work that's being put on us, the stress that's being put on the NHS, and the effect that is having on the public needs to be turned around. We need to fight back against deregulation within the fire service, within the building industry, and within the NHS. I was very proud at last year's FBU National Conference to second a motion against physician associates that Mary I've only seconded it because we'd already written our 3 motions, so I had to give it to someone else. So I not only seconded it, I also wrote the motion and wrote the speech for Lancashire and moved it. With that one. But now we're seeing other fights that trade unions and general working people have to take on. The 2-child benefit cap, that is sending so many families, not sending, it's sent so many families into poverty, into fuel poverty, into food poverty, and into housing poverty. It affects firefighters just as much as it affects everyone else. It's taking away our children's ability to learn. Hungry children cannot learn. Unfortunately, I feel that is what successive governments want. People who are not educated are easier to govern. They are easier to tell what to do. We need to fight this now. We need to tell this government that we will not stand for it. It's the same with the winter fuel allowance. They are going to kill. Their own figures have shown they're going to kill 3,000 pensioners. 4,000 pensioners. Sorry. It's going up by the minute. If it closer we get to Christmas, it might be 5,000 by then. We need to tell them that it is not acceptable. A simple tax on the highest earners would have eradicated that. Yet they will not do it because they are looking after their friends. This is one of the reasons why I cannot back this Labour Party. We're seeing those on disabled benefits attack as well. Just a few weeks ago, a very good friend of mine who cannot work, he will never be able to work, yet he is being told that he is going to be means tested again. He constantly lives in a wheelchair. That is not going to change. But they carry on with this, making him go through the same process again and again. And they change the rules every time. It is not acceptable in this country. It's not acceptable anywhere. And unfortunately, with what's just happened in the US, I really feel that global politics are going to take an even bigger lurch to the right. One of the first people to congratulate Trump was Orban, and we know exactly what that is. Starmer's come out and congratulated him, maybe he had to, but he will move towards that way because Starmer, like Trump, is a populist and he will do whatever it can to mean he holds on to power. Labour will move further to the right, and for me, they're already over there to start with. We must stand together, comrades. We must oppose, but most of all, we must hold on to hope. Look at what we've done on a Thursday night here. Look at what the MPA manifesto is doing. Look at the marches that we are going on with young children and young women. That always astounds me, that young women leading the chants at the Palestine marches is absolutely outstanding. We must take hope from that. We must carry on fighting and we will win. Thank you very much, comrades.
Not just the FBU that we have really good links with. You know, we have people from the Fire Brigade Union here, who one of the comrades, one of the members of the RMT, actually made this beautiful, absolutely strong banner, which is Martin. As a gift to the FPA, but we do have a great relationship with the RMT. We've supported them and supported them and supported them, and they've supported us over the years. So, it's just broad links with all you, very, very important for any organisation who is fighting, for justice and workers' rights and so on. So I don't want to, our next speaker is Mary Whitby. Mary Whitby is co-chair, the vice chair of the MPA, but she is also one of the most informed activists I've ever come across. She really is very, very thorough in what she does, and she's really driven our organisation, especially over PAs, physician associates, right the way through the healthcare. These associates that are being used right through the NHS and so on, and also raise the question of pre-ports. So I'm really educated and put us in touch with the people that we need to be in touch with to learn about this subject, and actually have, educated us, if you like. And we've had speakers that Mary's recommendations that have really put us to the forefront of this campaign. So we have a lot to thank Mary Whitby for. So Mary, could you come through? Mary Whitby.
Happy birthday!
I think my speech is going to be a bit disjointed, and the thing which links most of our manifesto is corporatisation. We've seen 40 years of the dismantling of the welfare state, and Leah's right, it's a trade issue, union issue. All trade unionists need good services, good health, the welfare state that was created post-war. And we need councils, MPs, and governments who work for us, not for the benefit of big business. And in the face of a managed decline in this city, MPA and the city of Liverpool fought back and continue to do that. And Mary is right. We are the opposition and the leader on so many issues. And the manifesto is the working document which informs our campaigns and guides anyone who wants to know what we're about. We led the way on opposing the PAs, and with the support of the FBU and the Bakers Union. We have been really one of the only voices fighting for that outside of doctors, and they were really pleased to have our support as well. We've been going down to London, we've been outside the Royal College of Physicians in Liverpool and in London, we've been to Parliament, we've been all over the place, been outside Alder Hay recently, and we're going to go outside all the other hospitals in the next few weeks as well. We've done leaflets and banners, and we've tried to use social media as much as we could. So free ports and the NHS, the thing that links them and all the other issues in the manifesto is corporatisation. So we are replacing our democratic, publicly run services with corporate capture, big business wanting to set up boards where they control what's on offer, who can access it, and who gets the lucrative contracts. And the least they spend on providing that service and the fewer people they provide the service to, the bigger profits they make. And Bevan created the NHS in place of fear, and we are returning back to a time when people are scared to get sick, and that's what a pot banner says, scared to get sick. We have 7.5 million people on waiting lists and over 1,000 excess deaths every single week. That is people dying avoidably, that could be avoided. And we're given all sorts of spiel about what the reason is. You know, that we're all malingerers, we're using the NHS too much. Well, the chances be a finding, you can't get GP appointments. So I don't know how, on the one hand, we're all using it too much, and on the other, we can't get an appointment. Aging population, which is, we are scapegoated left, right, and centre. I know you've just mentioned it does affect your service, but we are scapegoated. You know, the population that built the NHS, who worked in it and benefited from it, we're now being told that we're the ones who are causing this manufactured crisis. And the crisis is created by restructuring the NHS on the American model. And it's not underfunding, understaffing, aging population, immigration, COVID, all the things that they keep telling us. We're the sixth richest country in the world. We can afford the NHS. It's not that it's unaffordable. We can. It takes a political will to support the NHS and fund it. And plowing more money into it without reinstating the NHS as a publicly run service with comprehensive services and the single provider, which is the NHS, because at the moment we've got thousands of providers, we've got multiple commissioners of these integrated care boards, which are an American model. Well, previously we had one NHS and they provided for all our needs, and we didn't need the private sector because everything we needed we got through the NHS, so the private sector couldn't get a foothold. So in order to give them opportunities, they've shrunk the NHS and they continue to dismantle it to give them opportunities to take profit. So they take NHS contracts, very lucrative. And in the city now, we've just seen an article in the Echo this week where they're going to merge all 5 hospitals. We've been saying that was going to happen. That's £2 billion worth of money going into that service. And the person who is running the joint committee has been brought back from Qatar, where he ran 13 private hospitals. And he says he wants to, in the Echo, I think it said, he wants to build a group that is competing globally. Well, sorry. That's competing globally. And I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in him building his empire and his fiefdom. I just want to know that my family and friends get the care they need when they need it, that they can access, get to see a family GP and get to a hospital that's in their community, not miles away. So, you know, today we've been at the engagement board, engagement meeting, because they plan to close Liverpool Women's Hospital, which again, the campaign has been running for 9 years to fight that. And their plans, the plans of the government of Simon Stevens have never changed over that time. It doesn't matter who's in government, the plan stays the same. And, you know, they have been determined, but their case to change is empty. It's back to us. There's nothing in it. There's no clinical reason. There's no safety reason. There's no equality reason. There's not even a financial reason, because they're not actually going to close the hospital building. They still want to keep that open. So, you know, our argument is keep it there, and if it needs extra support or work, build whatever it needs there. So we would encourage people to go along to those engagement appointments. 24 people turned up today because we put it on Twitter. That many people to come, so they're a bit overwhelmed. And they said, could we please make sure people register in future, because then they'll bring enough staff to outnumber. But so they said there was only 4 members of staff and 24 of us, and they were roundly told that we don't want that hospital to close. They had no case. Really, it's pathetic. Their argument is, you know, the women's is safe, but it's not safe. We're not saying it's not safe. But Aintree and Royal are not safe because they don't have women's services there. They don't have maternity and gynae. So their solution to make one of those safe, because it won't make them both safe, is to close a dedicated women's hospital to make women it beggars belief, really. So yeah, we've been campaigning against the replacement of doctors in the NHS with physician associates who are not qualified doctors, but, you know, patients are being misled because they don't know who they're seeing quite often. They can go to a GP surgery and not actually see a doctor. And quite often, physician associates are saying they are doctors, and they're not meant to say that. They're not meant to prescribe. They're not meant to issue, orders for ionizing X-rays. And same in the hospitals, they're working there too. So we think that we want to see properly qualified doctors when we're sick. And the same with other, we don't want to see firefighters associates, do we? We want to see properly qualified, fully trained firefighters and train drivers. We wouldn't go in a place, because what they're talking about is letting them, say, an anaesthetist associate or a surgeon associate carry out operations, put you to sleep, and they'll have one qualified anaesthetist supervising maybe 3 theatres. So that's like sitting on a plane. That's like a pilot sitting on the ground on the end of a radio. 3 planes up in the air being flown by cabin crew. And then go, yeah, that's right, use that lever, go. And then if something goes wrong in one of them planes, the other 2 are left on the road, nothing going on. So you've only got to have one emergency in a surgery, in a theatre, and the others are, it's so dangerous, it really is. So we're fighting against that. And then I've somehow got a link, it's free put. So integrated care boards are unelected, undemocratic boards of business people. They are not accountable to us. We can't remove them and we can't influence them. And they are working for government and for big business. Similarly, with combined authority boards, they are not elected, again, not democratic, we're not accountable to us. We don't know, how they're getting on these boards. They're appointed by Steve Rotherham on his own in his little fiefdom and his little empire. And the same with free court boards. Now, we never voted to have a free court. We never voted to privatise our region, our city, our port. In fact, in the Northwest, there was a referendum some years ago, devolution, and we voted against it because we know what managed supply looks like. And we know that if they left us on our own, cut off, they're not going to be sending money up here to us. And Rotherham couldn't answer. So when these free court employers in these free courts don't have to pay national insurance contributions, they don't have to pay business rates, they don't have to pay taxes, they get tax subsidies, they're licensed for 25 years. You can't go back in the EU for 25 years because what they're doing is against EU rules, because you're not meant to give preferential treatment to businesses in your country over other EU countries. So it's not in our interest at all. They can relax employment laws, food safety laws, environmental laws, planning laws. They can build on green belts. They can take your house and compulsory purchase it. None of this has been discussed. So just as we didn't vote for privatisation of the NHS, we haven't voted for privatisation of our regions. And we've got this corporate capture across all of the welfare state, where big business will decide what goes on in our region, in our health, in our education. Universities the same, they've been, corporatized. And I think, we need to fight back against that. So we have been doing that. MPA is one of the only organisations really talking about the restructure of health, because it's not just underfunding and understaffing. Because Virgin Care will bite your hand off if you give them more money. They're like, yeah, I'll take that contract, give me that money, I'm not going to give you any more services, but else is it? So yeah, I think just to so yeah, I think if anyone can join us, come out with us outside the hospitals to talk to patients and staff, because we do get a lot of good responses from them. They're shocked when we tell them about what's gone on in the NHS, about replacing 2 doctors, about the closure of the Women's Hospital, and come to the engagement meetings. I think Leslie's probably got the dates, and they've been put out on the MPA. Talk to your friends and family about it, ask them to get involved, because every one of us needs the NHS, and read our manifesto. There's a lot more information in there about the reports and the health restructuring. And if you've got any questions, let us know.
Not You know, this is how talented our members are. And we've got a treasure, to be honest with you, everyone who's in the MPA, and we've got a treasure beyond all treasures. Absolutely. Well, a team.
Real treasure.
He's a treasure, yeah, that's right, yeah. So, our treasure is Dave Pollard. He's a sax player, he's an activist, and he's a sometime poet. So he's going to read us a poem.
Yeah, it's sort of following on from Mary, really, on Freeports. I think earlier this year we sort of started to learn what was going on with them, Freeports and special economic zones. And we had a speaker at one of our meetings, and our meetings are fantastic because we have speakers at them, and then we can discuss all these issues with that speaker and take away all the knowledge that we gain. It's fantastic. We really started to understand what was going on, as I say, a few months ago. And then I read something that really struck home to me, which was that British governments have sold off every single public asset and are now looking to sell off cities and huge swathes of land in free ports and special economic zones. This means they will be privately owned, and within them corporations can organise their own policing, education and welfare, avoid paying tax and employ a workforce of indentured slaves. Those 74 special economic zones and 12 free ports, which Sunak set up, are now being pushed through by Starmer, and they'll reconfigure the UK into small corporate governed states. What happened was, I mean, as I've got older, I think, I've noticed that when I get angry at something, as I'm getting older, I find when I'm getting angry at something, the words start to flow out sort of poetically, a little bit. Sometimes it rhymes. So I started putting something together a few months ago, and this is called Corporate Coup. Beware the feudal free ports, where democracy will die, where corporates fill their pockets, and the people wonder why. Their human rights have been removed, but they don't share the wealth. Public services whittled away, no care, no housing, no health. Beware the feudal free ports, where tax evaders thrive, at the cost of all those honest folk who struggle to survive. Where corporations legislate, unelected by you and me, legalising lawlessness for their own security. And while they distract us with footy and celebrity tales, call decent folk woke, because that never fails, say benefit scroungers just take what they can, it's the corporate coup. That's their dastardly plan. It's the corporate coup. That's their dastardly plan. Beware the feudal free ports, where deregulation rules, removing our protections to benefit the ghouls, who gladly wreck communities to make a pretty penny. Profit at all costs for the few, no rights or hope for the many. Beware the feudal free ports, slave labour is what they need. Work till you drop, never stop, got to feed the boss's greed. The social contract is being ripped up for the benefit of the few. They said we'd take back control, but control is now with who? And while they distract us with royals and reality shows, create culture wars to turn friends into foes, point at the small boats, say they're after your lot. It's the corporate coup, that's their dastardly plot. It's the corporate coup, that's their dastardly plot. Beware the feudal free ports, where the rights which were so hard won are burnt on the corporate bonfire. The clampdown's already begun. Protest will not be permitted. It cannot be entertained by capitalists focused on profit and power and monetary gain. So fear the feudal tree ports, where democracy will die, where corporates fill their pockets and the people wonder why. They heard no jackboots pounding as corporate fascism tiptoed in. This is a horror we have to fight, and a fight we have to win. Solidarity.
So, we come to a very, very important part of our meeting, and we are very, very grateful, absolutely grateful for the support of Andrew Feinstein. For Andrew to come here from London, Liverpool, from London, and spend time with us, with the pensioners organisation, the work he does for the movement, the work he's done all his life for the movement, is absolutely tremendous. His commitment. I mean, we've been talking tonight about what we have ahead of us. We've been talking about militancy. We need to talk about militancy. And if you want a bit of militancy, you listen to Andrew. His commitment. We need to be committed. We need to celebrate, what we do, what our victories. We need to be persistent in what we do. We need to work hard. We have radical change to gain. And if we don't have that radical change, we really are finished. We really are finished. And I'm not going to make a speech. I just want to say that all the things that we see, that we recognise tonight that we need to do, is really embodied in the work that Andrew has done all his life. Andrew, as we know, famously stood against Keir Starmer and massively reduced his but more famously, a man who's worked with Nelson Mandela, who's fought apartheid and won, a man who's helped to build a party that actually achieved the death of apartheid in South Africa. To actually work alongside Nelson Mandela is fabulous, but to be a successful member of the National Congress and to be an MP in South Africa is absolutely amazing. He's also a filmmaker, his activism. He made films. He wrote the fantastic book, which is probably more important than anything he's done, The Shadow World Inside the Global Arms Trade. And if you haven't read it, go and get it, go and buy it, or borrow it, or steal it. Absolutely. Well, one thing I didn't know that you're on the board of Declassified UK with Matt Kennard. Actually have Matt Kennard here to come speaking to the MPA. I saw him a few weeks ago as well at the Transform Conference. Absolutely wonderful fighter as well. Does some brilliant work. So, without any further ado, and with many thanks, genuine thanks, Andrew Feinstein.
First of all, just to say thank you very much for the invitation. It's good to have such an important excuse to come to Liverpool, because I've been told by various people as we try and build local structures in Camden post the election, I've been told by my team I'm not supposed to travel outside of Camden, and I have to justify to them every time I do. This time I just said to them, you say no, I put Audrey on you. It really is always a great pleasure to be here, and particularly to mark the launch of this manifesto. And I really want to commend all of those who were responsible for producing this document. It really is exceptional and incredibly important at this moment in our political history. So the details are incredibly important, and there were things that I should have known about because I turned 60 earlier this year, but I'm completely oblivious to. And in that sense, it actually made quite terrifying reading in some respects, when we realize just what is happening to what we regarded as our rights, as being members of the society who've contributed certainly far more than I have. But what it really does is it explains why in this country and across the world, we desperately need a new politics, a new way of doing politics. Because what we have has failed so dismally. Let us just think for a moment at what is supposed to be the most powerful country on the planet. The choice we were given originally was between someone who, in any functioning, sane society, would have been in jail decades and decades ago, set up against someone who, showing the collapse of that country's care system, should have been in care rather than with his finger on the nuclear button and deciding seemingly on his own, with the consent of his corporatist party, that he should run again for election. This is the choice that the most powerful country on the planet can offer? Well, if that's power, if that's democracy, it sure ain't working. But what brings home even more than that to the failure of our politics is that as we sit here, as we all know, the genocide is taking place. It is being live streamed to the world as it happens. And I wish I could just say that our governments are doing nothing about it. Because the reality is, our governments are not just enabling, facilitating, providing political and diplomatic protection for an apartheid state, according to the highest court in the world, an apartheid state in 2024. This isn't just about how democracy is failed. It's about how our civilization, how our humanity has failed. But we are not just enabling and facilitating. We are profiting. We are profiting from the slaughter of innocence that we are seeing every day. After the Holocaust, we created an edifice, an architecture of international law to ensure that something like that can never happen again. Our governments, led by these pathetic little human beings like Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, supposedly a former human rights lawyer who has lost any shred of humanity he might once have had. They have decided in their infinite wisdom, because remember, our media tell us that these are the grown-ups when it comes to politics. In their infinite wisdom, they have decided to destroy the entire edifice of the international rule of law. So when they call out Vladimir Putin, as I, by the way, happen to believe they should, for the illegal invasion of Ukraine, which has also killed citizens, innocent citizens, the rest of the world laughs at them. In my own country, South Africa, they look at the United Kingdom and they don't know whether to laugh or cry. Because how can we call out somebody because we've decided he's our enemy for the wanton destruction of civilian life, where we let another state commit unspeakable crimes that we haven't seen since the Holocaust, and expect anybody to listen to us, because that is what we have done to the world. And we have to remember that the issues that are spoken about in this manifesto, crucial issues about our daily lives, and how much more difficult they are being made by our own government. And it's so well put by that banner and by Mary and others. We fear getting sick. We are scared of getting sick. And one of the reasons for that is because we are investing tens of billions of pounds every year in the companies that are providing the weapons for the slaughter of innocent Palestinians and Lebanese. That is our tax money, public money, that is used to commit genocide, the crime of all crimes. And it doesn't matter what is happening to ordinary people in this country. There is always money for war. So quite frankly, and I'll ask you to please excuse my rudeness, but much like your treasurer, who has more talents than should be allowed in any one human being, which seems to be the case of many of your officers, which disturbs me deeply. I too am so angry and so fed up with the state of the world and the awfulness of our politicians. But the reality is we are told by these Adams who are in charge of our politics that there is no magic money tree. But let me tell you, there is when it comes to war. There's a whole forest. And quite frankly, my own constituency MP, Keir Starmer, can take his military money tree and stick it up his arse. In Keir Starmer's Britain today, We have more billionaires than we have ever had in our history. And we have more families needing to use food banks to feed themselves than at any time since the Second World War. In his own constituency of Holborn and St Pancras, his council, the 3 senior members of whom were parachuted into safe Labour seats and are now sitting in the hall of shame that they call Westminster. What they decided to do as councillors is to force as many poor people out of the borough of Camden as they could and as they still can, in order to build luxury apartments, retail spaces for all the brands we know, and office blocks. 3 estates are under threat of demolition as we speak. And people, and you'll find this quite interesting, people are being offered alternative accommodation, but not in Camden, where they've spent their entire lives, and in some cases, generations of their families. But in Stoke and Preston, and you'll find this particularly interesting given the housing situation, in a place called Liverpool. That's where they're being offered houses. Now, how that works, I have no idea. No idea. But instead of building council houses, instead of actually ensuring that desperately needed repairs to council housing or social housing happen, Keir Starmer's council provided £1.5 million to a tiny little tech startup desperate for cash called Google to build a new British corporate headquarters right next to the Camden Council. These are the decisions that are being made with our money. And let's just take that to a national level and look at the budget that high Tory Rachel Reeves presented. You'll be shocked to know that defence spending increased by £3 billion so that we can supply more to Israel to continue this war. But that's only what they are going to tell us about in the defence budget, because they also announced an open check for Ukraine. So whatever Ukraine needs, we, the taxpayers of Britain, are going to give them. And in return, winter fuel allowance is scrapped. No increase to 2-child benefit cap. Tuition fees increase. Bus fares increase. Privatization of the NHS accelerated with no new public investment. And not a penny, not 1 penny more taken from the super wealthy who run this country. That's the budget we've been given. Now, with a few notable exceptions, our members of Parliament don't represent their constituents. They don't represent us. They represent their billionaire donors and their corporate sponsors. In Britain today, we have the best democracy money can buy. Because it's bought and paid for. And there is no better symbol of this democracy that money has bought than my own constituency MP, a millionaire who gets his glasses paid for, his suits paid for, an apartment paid for so that his son can study for his GCSEs without distraction, while in parts of the country he leads, Students often can't afford to have the lights they need to be able to study at night, let alone the internet they need, let alone the heating their homes need at this time of year. But Lord Ali was there with tens of thousands of pounds to ensure that little Starmer could sit in a luxury apartment to give him the best chance in life. The man is at best a sociopath. He says these things. Does he actually hear what he's saying? Does he actually understand how millions of others in this country feels when they hear him say these things? You know, the reality is, last summer, he was told by his esteemed advisors that he couldn't take his family to Italy. He had to really sacrifice and holiday in Britain. So he lowered his standards and he went to a beach holiday in Wales. But he got some little van hire company to pay for his family's holiday. What is the matter with this man? And this is the person we make Prime Minister. Never has there been a more emblematic symbol of public life in Britain. Mendacious, corrupt, mediocre, and greedy. And we have all of those things in one horrible little package. But look, I'm being unfair. I should be proud of mine. He's a record breaker. No. The MP for Holborn and St Pancras is breaking records. Records that Boris Johnson, Gordon Brown, Tony Blair only dreamt about. It took Tony Blair's government 1,717 days to see his popularity fall below 30%. It took Gordon Brown, who struggled a bit with television and charisma, 1,004 days. It took Boris Johnson basically a mop with no moral. 775 days for his incompetent, inept, and corrupt administration to see its popularity fall below 30%. It took my esteemed, highly qualified Member of Parliament 70 days. So, the rest of Britain took 70 days to realize what we've known for the 10 years we've had this person as our Member of Parliament. He has only one interest. And honestly, I think even his family can attest to this. His only interest. It's not Arsenal Football Club. It's not international relations. It sure as hell is not human rights. It's Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And I believe that in Westminster, there's already a betting book open as to how long he'll last. A lot of money on 18 months. My money is on 3 years. And you know the worst thing about all of that? He wouldn't give a damn. Because he'll go off to some multi-million-dollar corporate job And he won't even have to forget about us, because he never thinks about us. He doesn't give a damn for us. Exactly. But now, it's important to understand, and this is not just about Keir Starmer, just as the genocide is not just about Benjamin Netanyahu. It's about the systems. It's about the politics. It's about what we allow and what we forbid. What we allow is our defense companies like BAE Systems, Kinetic, Rolls-Royce, and of course the jewel in the crown, Elbit Systems. Well, the jewel in Israel's crown. But for some reason, we allow to still operate 7 factories in the United Kingdom. Those defense companies are committing a genocide in our name with our tax powers. But they are part of a defense industry that is the most corrupt industry the world has ever seen, accounting for 40% of all corruption in all world trade. And what that corruption does, so when the dear departed Maggie Thatcher that Liverpool loved so much did an arms deal with Saudi Arabia, in which she happily paid £6 billion of bribes. That's billion with a B. Not all that money went to the Saudi royal family. A lot of it went to intermediaries, including banks and lawyers, and accountants, and consultants of various types. Some of it, £12 million in fact, went to her wastrel son, Mark. Why? Well, because Mrs. Thatcher was a pragmatic woman. She didn't want to spend the rest of her life having to fund this person who never made a penny for himself but spent a lot of money, whose only achievement in his entire life was to get lost in a desert. But you can't only reward your own family. Let's not forget that dear Dennis made his fortune out of breaking the oil and arms embargo against apartheid South Africa. Nice family. You've got to give some to those who are going to keep you in power. So the chair of BAE Systems, and here I will use his honorific, like I don't with my MP, Sir Richard Evans, was given an apartment in Mayfair in central London worth £6.5 million. That was in 1986. I wonder what it's worth today. And then the main arms dealer on the deal, Wafik Saeed, after whom the Saeed Business School at Oxford is named, gave hundreds, if not thousands of people a whole lot of money from the millions, if not billions, that he made from the deal, but not to spend. No, that might contribute to our economy. He gave it to them to donate to the Tory party. Because it is through this corruption in the defense trade that our political parties and individual politicians get funded. They oil the wheels of our political system. And that's why every single year our defense budgets will go up. Because if we're not spending more on defense, how can we be paying these huge bribes that we need to continue to pay so that our politics are well funded? So, our tax funds are not just funding a genocide in Gaza and Lebanon. We are paying for the corruption of our own political system. Seems to be a fair business model if you're a politician or run one of the defense companies. I've just produced a book that, amongst others, Jeremy Corbyn and I edited, called Monstrous Anger of the Guns: How the Global Arms Trade is Ruining the World and What We Can Do About It. Because do something, we have to. Because the only way they can maintain this completely absurd political system is through ever greater repression, ever greater closing of the political space. And that is why today in Britain, we are seeing the Terrorism Act being used against people who oppose genocide, specifically journalists and activists. Palestine Action, which Tayo has so brilliantly taken direct action with, is under threat of being banned. They have a number of political prisoners in jail as we speak, and they have a number of people, including their co-founder, on trial under the Terrorism Act. This is the reality of the Britain in which we live. You are a terrorist if you oppose the genocide of innocent people. Well, I've got news for my MP. You are the real terrorist.
Yeah.
To support it. What we need in Britain, and I would argue across the world, but let's stick to Britain for the moment, a massive, democratic, grassroots-based movement built from the ground up. And that if its members so desire, once it has emerged from our local communities to help those communities, just as this organization has, it might even become a political party, but a political party with a difference, a political party that is not obsessed with individual politicians, not obsessed with a leader, but is rather of the people, for the people, by the people. And what such a political party would stand for? Real public service, which is an extraordinary, extraordinary honor to be able to serve your community. Nelson Mandela told us in South Africa after 94. It is the greatest honor that can be bestowed upon you. I'm sure Keir Starmer feels the same way. But it needs to be a political movement based not just on real public service, but on honesty, transparency, accountability, and actually the rule of law, which our lawyer Prime Minister is violating. This might seem difficult because things are very tough at the moment. But as someone who was part of a struggle that seemed in the late 1980s, in its darkest moments, when the apartheid state seemed at its most powerful, supported by Britain and America, we succeeded. We were victorious. We liberated our country, at least in the sense of national politics, if not economically. That is a challenge South Africa today still faces. But we defeated over 340 years of racist oligarchy. And we didn't do that because of Nelson Mandela. And he would acknowledge that. He was in jail for the last 27 years of our struggle. We did that because of the fortitude, the commitment, and the resilience of millions of South Africans who brought our economy to the brink. And we did it with the support of hundreds of millions of you around the world who engaged in BDS, the most powerful weapon we have against Israel and our own governments today. And we need to invoke that same commitment, that same resilience to change our politics. And yes, it seems difficult at the moment, but in the darkness, there is light. What we are seeing in Gaza and Lebanon now will lead to the end of Israel-Palestine as we know it today, and to a new just order for the Palestinian people. And in the same way, what this genocide has shown us around the world is just how appalling our politics and our political leaders are. The scales have fallen from our eyes, hundreds of millions of us, and they will never be closed again. And that's why we will be victorious. Palestine will be free, and we will create a political movement that gives us the representatives, our community representatives that we deserve, and gives us the politics that we deserve, the politics that will serve us. And in those moments where we think that's impossible and that's difficult and that's tough, don't forget what Nelson Mandela said. It's only impossible until we do it. Thank you.
I think every argument, every discussion we have ends up with how do we build a party. We talk about it, we're scared we're going to fail. That's what one of the most big things I think frightens the life out of us. If we move towards a party, if we fail, it is humiliating for us, because there's been that movement there, the movement is still there, it's massive, it's leaderless, but we have to make sure. I don't think anywhere else is like in Liverpool. We work together, everybody from, Tusk, we see each other's faults, the SWP, all these different organisations that we don't see eye to eye on, but we work together. As you can see that what's happened over Palestine has brought the movement together. And when we say, "Oh, it's terrible, the world's standing round," we're seeing this this genocide, and we're not doing anything. It's the governments around the world. We have to recognise that they are united in their indifference to genocide, in their permission to break international law, while people are horrified. And that, when you say, and as an old world dies, is a time of monsters. And it really has, lived at the world now is at that point. And I don't know whether there's an impatience with a lot of us, probably because of our age, but probably because there's world war looming, that we really are so impatient to see our movement united nationally and moving forward, as you say, not behind anybody, but behind the ideas. And that's why the MPN have actually drawn together the ideas to put across the world that we want. It's the world that we had almost. We had that world. It wasn't perfect. We needed to fight for more, and we did fight for more. We did. We were always critical that we needed, to maintain all the things that we want, but we also wanted to progress with more benefits for the working class, with more rights for the working class, and as you say, more accountability. A really, really important thing. Transparency, absolutely vital. But we hope by putting it together, like no one else in the country has done, a manifesto of painting the world that we demand. And you're dead right, we have to demand that world. And we're really grateful for you to come along and give us our support. And I hope that the comrades who are listening the live stream, you know, take the time to, you can write to us and we'll send a copy, PDF or wherever it is, of our manifesto. Read it and build it and fight for it. And that's what the MP is about. So thank you all for coming, and thank you so much. We have allocated some time, not a lot, because everybody spoke over their time. Andrew had as long as he had. So if there's any questions, please keep them very short. Sorry, Trace. Keep them very short and contributions even, but try and keep them as short as possible. So Tracy, Paul Philby, did you want to speak? Did you have your hand up then? No, okay. Sorry. Can you come up here, Tracy? Sorry, you just do on me. And you, and then you.
I will be short because I could feel Audrey's eyes behind me when I speak. I just like to give thanks again to the Merseyside Pensioners Association for this manifesto. I was here for the launch of the first one. I've not read all of this, and I agree with every point that's being made. But one thing that we need to also take into account is the other impacts that's happening in this country now because of how all of these things link together. And that is where we were in August. That is, you know, being engaged in anti-racism and anti-fascism. Because fascism is a tool of capitalism. It's about making people on the ground stop thinking about how bad they've got it and blaming it on other people and using that energy to put that on other people who were othered, whichever group that happens to be at that time, instead of against the so-called elite. I don't think they're the elite. You know, the bleeding classes, you know, instead. And that is a very practical thing. And to also ignore the fact that actually if we don't do anything about this planet, you know, we're all going to go down with that. So we need to focus to fight against anti-racism and fascism. I know that was in the last one, and it will be in this one, but we need to put all the pieces together because it's one big jigsaw here. Yeah. And if we don't, you know, like let that ball go, we can see with the votes that Reform got, we can see with the on the ground the people who have been there and it didn't take much persuasion for a total lie for them to have an excuse to come out and target people. And especially at the moment, the Islamophobia is the strain that they're going with at the moment, and that is totally because they are absolutely appalled at the turnout of people in support of people in Palestine. It's all very purposefully done, so we just must remember that as well. So I'll just leave it there.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. No matter who you vote for, the government get it. Andrew made the point. We're not winning the arguments. We haven't been winning the arguments for a long time. We need to find ways, the language, to encourage more people to get involved. Because what I've seen, you know, there's some very good groups around, but look what happens in elections. We don't get very far. We need to change our tune. We need to discuss how we're going to do that collectively. There's a myriad of they call themselves revolutionary organisations who all sing the same hymn from the same hymn sheet, basing back to how the Communist Party was organised, and the Communist Party ended up with Stalin. So I've got some reservations about these groups who try and work with them, but I do find there's a lot of sectarian ideas around that get in the way a little bit. There's one issue I'd like to take up with Andrew. Of course, you know, it's awful what's going on in Palestine. People getting slaughtered by a superior, you know, army. Well, that's what happened in Ukraine, you know, after the American-inspired coup, which a lot of Ukrainians, the Russian-speaking Ukrainians, didn't like very much because an apartheid system was getting introduced in Ukraine. So naturally, they didn't like it. And they started defending themselves. And over the course of several years, there were 12 or 14,000 people, predominantly civilians, killed by the Ukrainian army. So I'm not going to condemn Putin. I'm not going to congratulate him either. But I think we should be very careful who we point our fingers at, because if Russia hadn't come in, you can guarantee there'd have been hundreds of thousands of Eastern Ukrainians murdered over in the Donbass.
Thanks, Paul.
I agree. Our message isn't getting across. I was at a meeting not long ago, and our education is poor, very, very poor. We've got so much to do, and we need to make it fun. We need to make it. We don't need to make it like an endurance. It's got to be fun. It's got to be something you want to do. And there was somebody at a meeting. He said, people need a vision and they need hope. And the right do that. The right say, they're the problem, you're unhappy, they're the problem, get rid of them, job done. We know that's a lie, but it's very easy to hook onto. And so we really need to engage very much differently than we have done in the past. So we need discussions that are open without somebody telling everybody what to do and to explore something completely new. The other thing is, I'm aware that we have two very welcome visitors in the room from our friendly paper, the Morning Star. In Liverpool, we always give visitors a welcome, and we haven't welcomed you. So if you could stand up and introduce yourself, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
I've got a little speaking, I'll bring you in here.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm being overruled here.
Well, I'm glad I got brought up actually because I wanted to query and check it was okay to report on this because I came over.
Well, No's been a friend of ours.
Oh, great. Oh, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
we know some of the comrades.
So it's all right to take photos and that's
Of course it is.
Get accreditation or anything. So, yeah, my name's Lizzie or Elizabeth, and I'm going to see you on Monday down in Croydon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Thank
you.
Yeah,
Look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. The Morning Star is recognised in this city as, one of the very few journals that, we don't have any fear of, trying to do us down like, the Liverpool record. Sorry?
You mean proper report?
Yeah. So, yeah, so you're very welcome here. Thank you. Anne, could you come up? And then I think we'll just have Andrew just wind up and maybe respond to a few of the points.
I'm getting to that age now where I absolutely hate stairs because I'm so frightened of falling down. I'd just like to say that I think the Merseyside Pensioners, it's not perfect, but it's an absolute blueprint for every organisation on the left. And there's lots of things that we can add to this. And what I wanted to ask Andrew about is for me, I haven't seen anybody else bring out something like this. And this is, we were talking before about how do you get people together. And this is, we're talking about changing the face of politics here by having a new party. And I mean, I've got some concerns. I'm still not sure how it's going to go. But I do think that we've got to have this. People have talked about the splitting of the left. And there are lots of left-wing groups that we have to come together because we've got no choice. We are talking here about the end of the world. We're talking about the end of any civilization. We're heading to, it almost feels like we're heading to an apocalypse. And I don't want that for my children, the grandchildren, and those. So I do think that what we've got here, this is the start here. I think our manifesto here is the start of the blueprint for the new party. And I think may have been Tayo before was saying, what is our most powerful weapon? Our most powerful weapon here is our voices and what we say. And in Liverpool, we're not afraid anaesthetic associate. This means that somebody with 2 years experience is going to come along and put you under an anaesthetic, while the real anaesthetist is sort of supervising 3 or 4. I mean, it was said in jest, but firefighter associates, you can almost see it coming, because they're talking about midwifery associates, and it's not something that is being talked about in 5 years. They are actively recruiting 10,000 midwifery associates. Well, it fills me with absolute sheer horror. And for anybody who's ever worked in that profession, to think that you're going to get people who are not trained midwives, are not going to be trained nurses, and they're going to be allowed to deliver, babies, it beggars belief. But this is what is happening now. So for me, I just think this is the start of it. We've got a tough time ahead. We can't ignore what's going on in Europe. We can't even ignore what's gone on in America. But the little thing that I was heightened by was, whilst we know Trump has got in with 70-odd million votes, and there is no Labour Party in the States, there is no working movement in the States. But, I want to know really, we've got those connections across the pond. There is things to do there. Kamala Harris, or whatever. Kamala Harris. So bad on that. I've been working all day, so I'm getting the words mixed up. She got over 65 million votes, and you can't ignore those. Those are 65 million votes, as opposed to Trump's 70-odd million votes. So there are people there who are looking for the change. There are people in this country who are looking for the change, and I do think that if we don't come together, if the trade unions and the organisations and Liverpool, we're going to play a leading role in this. If we don't come together, what else is that? We have to do it. We've got to do it for our children and our grandchildren's sake. But this is the blueprint. There's things in here already. I'm looking at stuff and I'm thinking we need to add to that. I want to see the privatisation of the pharmaceutical companies. That should be in there. That should be absolutely one of our main things. We're all in agreement with it, but we have to
Nationalisation.
You said Can I just say the nationalisation of the pharmaceutical companies, and we need to have research companies, health research, who are completely independent of pharmaceutical companies themselves. The research that is coming out is absolutely tainted. And after the fiasco of COVID, people now are losing faith in any research that we see. But I'd like to say thanks very much now.
Make some closing comments and perhaps answer some of the points that's been raised. Thank you, Anne.
Very quickly, because you've heard more from me than anybody should have to endure. By acknowledging that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is illegal in terms of international law, first of all, we have to be clear, international law is not above criticism either. There are problems with international law. It effectively is a way of saying, well, you can do war, but you can do it nicely. So international rule of law itself is not completely unproblematic and needs to be criticized. I'm finding this very difficult because I'm writing a book at the moment called Making a Killing, How the West Profits from Slaughter in Gaza and Yemen. And grappling with these sort of legal things is incredibly difficult. By saying that the invasion is illegal, doesn't mean that there haven't been provocations, doesn't mean that Ukraine is necessarily some sort of hero in armor, because of course Ukraine isn't. I mean, its own president, Zelensky, was in the Pandora Papers. He had $1.4 billion offshore. There are Nazi militias incorporated into the Ukraine military. So of course there is a lot more nuance. And it's not, sorry, if I oversimplified it, I sincerely apologize. And one of the problems with our politics is that our politicians try and oversimplify everything, turn it into good versus evil, black versus white. If only the world was that way. There's no problem with nuance. My campaign team in Camden kept on saying to me, just be simple. And I said, why? The people I'm talking to, the people of Camden aren't simple. They're smarter than I am. Let's engage in the meaningful conversations, because that's how we find the right solutions. By putting our heads together and by working together and by engaging. And difference of opinion is actually a great thing. You know, and here I come to another topic that I won't go into very much, but it's like at the moment there's this notion that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic. Now, if you ever want something that defines oxymoronic, that is it. Because Zionism and anti-Zionism are both ideologies, were both developed by Jewish thinkers. So now suddenly to decide that that one half of Judaism isn't Jewish and is anti-Semitic, in fact, is just a complete nonsense. And it just shows the ways in which these things are weaponized for political purposes. And the reason I raise that is because if any of you have ever heard me speak before or seen any of the videos I do for Double Down News and loads of others, I'm incredibly proud to be Jewish. And one of the things I love about being Jewish is that quite literally, and this doesn't only apply to Jews, it applies to lots of communities. But you put two of us in what used to be a telephone box, and we'd have 25 disagreements. And that's what brings out the best in what's in here, is when we engage with each other and we don't think we all have to agree all the time. That's how we get to the right results and the best conclusions. And that's really important for what we do politically going forward. I want to very quickly tell you something. There was recently an election in Belgium. I won't be surprised if not many of you were following it avidly. Belgium has 6 or 7 parliaments and so many levels of government for not very many people. And I don't understand the political system at all. But what I do understand is that the Belgian Workers' Party, which before 2008 was a Maoist group of at most 300 people, and I think they might have added a 0 to their numbers there, okay, took the decision to actually become less factional, to open up to as many people as possible, to make politics fun, and to actually deliver for communities before you ask them to vote for you. Now there's a novel idea. Okay, so when they go into a community, they tend to work in the poorest communities in Belgium. They don't get electorally involved until they've set up free legal clinics and health clinics. And you know what? The Belgian Workers' Party in this last election went from having 5 representatives across the country in its various complicated forms of government to having 248.
Action before votes.
And there's a lesson for us. So when we think, let's just create a political party yesterday, and a small group of us will decide what it should look like, what its manifesto should be, who its leaders should be, how it'll operate, how it'll function. I say no. I say let's engage and work in our communities like happens so much in Liverpool. In most of the rest of the country, it doesn't happen. There is Scouse exceptionalism. It's the reality. And we empower our communities to help themselves with their immediate crises in Camden, like housing, like education, like inequality, and many other things. And then we get the community to decide how it wants to create itself into a national movement with other communities working like that. And then it's the members of that movement who should determine what it will look like, what the manifesto should be, how its leadership will work, and who those leaders should be, and ensure they're not there for too long. It's all those sort of things, because there's a word that we talk about a lot, but I'm not sure how seriously we take it, and that's democracy. And real democracy is about letting the mass of people decide. And let them decide before we become a political party, rather than just when we want their votes. Because that's the way democracy should work. And what we've also got to do is we've got to welcome all. I'm incredibly fortunate not to be British. And I don't say that only because my constituency MP is the Prime Minister. When literally, I wouldn't want him in charge of my local youth football team. I certainly wouldn't trust him. I'm lucky for the following reason. I've been politically engaged for my sins since I was 12 years old. I've been of the left ever since I knew what politics was. And that's thanks to my mother, who was a Holocaust survivor, and who came to South Africa and believed that black South Africans were being treated like the Jews of Europe had been treated during the Second World War. And for her, never again meant for all humanity, not just for Jews. But it means that I don't know the history of the British political left. I don't know all the schisms and fractions and fractures and divisions. I don't know who hates somebody because of something that was said 28 years ago, or some ideological tendency that I'm not smart enough to understand. So I suppose it's easier for me to stand here and say, let's be welcoming. It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. The world faces an existential crisis. Let's get together, let's unify, and let's do something about that democratically from the grassroots up.
Yeah.
I can't follow that, so I'm not going to say. Except to say, who says we don't have fun? I think this meeting has been absolutely warm, well, entertaining. As we said at the beginning, education, you know, the city in education, listen to all the fabulous speakers we've had today. We've had music and we've had poetry. So, and we've got the best is yet to come.